Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dumb SEO Questions, episode 215. Each week we meet here to answer the questions asked on the SEO Questions community on Google+. You can also ask on our Facebook page, Dumb SEO Questions, and also on Twitter, Dumb SEO QS. All right. With us tonight, we have Andy Wigglesworth. Andy is web architect to the world. He lives in the frozen wastelands of the north of England. I just can't think of the name of the town. It's in Yorkshire area, I imagine, anyway. Michael Stricker is with us tonight. Thank you, Michael. And Michael used to be with SEMrush.
That's correct.
And now I wish I knew. You do a lot.
Yeah, so it's the joy of consultancy. So what flavor do you want this week?
Yeah. Excellent. And Tim Capper. So Michael, you're based in the USA, aren't you?
Yes, right outside of Philadelphia.
Tim Capper is based in the UK, in Corby, just a little north of London. Tim is a conversion rate optimization specialist and proud to call himself an SEO. You can find him at onlineownership.com. And he's also a Google top contributor on the Google My Business community. William Rock is a Google top contributor on the Google Web Search community. And William is based in Kansas. He's an SEO. And that's our run list tonight. All right. Our first question tonight is probably going to be long and involved. It just depends. This one is from Dean Morgan. He runs a business in the UK, EKM. And it's titled Domain Migration Guidelines. Dean goes on to say, hi guys, I hope you can help me with this one. I have a site which belongs to a UK-based business. In September, we performed a domain migration. For the purposes of this example, we'll call them, I just realized I wasn't supposed to give out the company name. I'm so sorry, Dean. I'll try and cut that out later. We'll call them olddomain.com and newdomain.com. And I followed all the usual best practice guidelines, 301 redirecting traffic, updating internal links, completed change of address form, etc. Originally, the site used to rank very well on google.co.uk for some of our main transactional keywords. However, since the migration, things have taken a slightly odd change. One page in particular, called Optimized Page 1, used to appear on page 1 for the main term we wanted. Let's call this keyword 1, while also ranking for other terms at position 30, and its brother and sister pages also fared relatively well. Now it seems that Optimized Page 1 is not ranking at all in the top 1,000 results for keyword 1 on google.co.uk, but it is appearing on google.com at position 45. On google.co.uk, it seems that keyword 2 isn't doing as badly and has only dropped to position 50 from position 30. The other pages have seen similar changes, but not as extreme, and in some cases we have seen an improvement. Actually, according to SEMrush, I think you've picked up about 1,000 keywords since the Penguin roll-up, Dean. All right. Anyway, so Dean goes on to say, so my question is, does anybody know why Optimization 1 could drop so much on google.co.uk but not on google.com when we are a UK-based business. If any further information is needed, please feel free to ask in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer.
Yeah, if I can jump in on this, Jim.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's a kind of a minor thing, and frequently we talk about, you know, it's all about the English language. It's about English-speaking nations, and you know, the UK and the US are similar. But I'm wondering if during the migration, some things like hreflang could have been neglected. Is it still, you know, in your head of your pages, and are you specifying en-UK, for instance? Be interesting to see how those URLs are faring, perhaps in the US now, rather than in the UK. So that's, you know, one thing. Whenever there's a migration, I always think about all the little neglected items that you've accumulated over time, any one of which could be, you know, causing problems. And this one falling off like that sounds similar to what could happen if it were another language. And, you know, I might think French would make a bigger difference, but, you know, thinking about that and the consistency of that, I see, Tim, you had something that you wanted to add about that?
Yeah, he seems to have them. Okay, the site, to be put it quite bluntly, over time, you've got a lot of subdomains, you've got a lot of different things. Your hreflang seems on your top line pages seem to be in play. Others you are missing. My biggest, when I first was looking at this earlier today with Jim, is your actual domain. So it's on newdomain.com. You've then 301 redirected that to newdomain/index4.asp. Canonicalized that back to newdomain.com. So in my mind, you're creating an infinite loop homepage. Now I see, and I don't know where, but I'm looking at some old cached pages, versions of your new domain, and you were using a base ref for the newdomain.com. But you've since changed that to newdomain.com index4.asp. So all your okay, so essentially we've got some things which Googlebot still needs to work their way through. But even with, let's say even with all of them indexed, you're still saying this is my homepage, but on your homepage you canonicalize it to a different homepage, which you're then 301 redirecting. So I would certainly have a look at that, because to my mind, I think you've got that wrong. If your homepage is going to be .com/index4.asp, then that should be reflected across your site, your internal links, and not to be trying to tell Googlebot that the canonical is this, but then you 301 redirecting the canonical back to a different URL. So I think you certainly want to look at that one. This just a little bit, because your site has had so many different bits and pieces that you've had to try and move it to. I mean, I found some bits of the blog, some parts of the blog which weren't they were still on just HTTP. There's some bits which, you know, it's entirely up to you, but I found some tagged, you know, your tags aren't no index, they're all indexed, you know, follow, which I personally think with the size of your site and the way it's going to be growing, I just think that it would be better with tags, especially tags, to no index, follow those. Found an issue with one canonical, for example, it was a article / en -gb / 20 blah 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 number, which was then canonicalizing well, but it was after the number, it was -tax -article. So I don't know why you've got two articles running. You know, when they're essentially the same one. It's not as if they were in a different section or category or anything. They were literally the same, you know, but on just a slightly different URL string. In your sitemap, you've got, I mean, this is not really going to, you know, it's not a pain but you've got parameter queries, which are in your sitemap, but of course, those are correctly canonicalized and they're no index, but you know, you're just wasting crawling there. So I think ideally you need to be looking at, just work your way through all the different parts of the site again. You know, you had quite a few subdomains, so check those subdomains. Check that they're properly, like for example, I found the blog, so some blogs not on HTTPS. I think you need to just start at the beginning again. Take, you know, the section and each subdomain, etc., and then just work your way through and double check them. You know, the site's grown to such a, you know, quite a large site now with different objects. Can certainly get a little bit, you know, built up over time, definitely.
Yeah, Tim. So, I'm getting a little echo here, but that sounds great. You know, it looks like a nest of crawlability issues that could add up to problems, especially at a transition time moving to, you know, a new domain. So somebody fill me in if you've already discussed this. I apologize, but was this webmaster talking about what kind of migration this was? Was there a new domain purchased, or was this simply migration to a new host? Or, you know, can somebody just spell that out for me, please?
Yeah, sure. The original domain was a I don't want to read the domain out, but there was an original domain which was a longer domain, and it was substituted for a new domain which was just the letters of the domain, just a 3-letter domain.
Okay. Can I ask, how long ago did this transition take place?
September of this year. September.
Okay, so it would have had time for, you know, the idea of sandboxing to take place and some recovery. So just curious, has the webmaster indicated any, I think I noted maybe some recovery, but not in some cases.
Yeah, it's mainly a particular keyword, a particular page, and a particular keyword, like a money keyword that he's lost, and it's dropped 1,000 points. I suspect, I mean, I know that if it's a manual penalty, that there should be something in his Google Search Console, and if it's algorithmic, there'll be nothing there. But you know, I suspect that somebody that Google might be having a laugh and just penalising him for that, because I mean, I know how Dean feels, because I looked at his work today, and it's just substantial. I know when Tim said he should go over the site and start over, and I'm sure Dean would rather push bamboo splints under his fingernails rather than go trawling through all of those subdomains and checking and rechecking. But yeah, to me, it's a good site, great work, and I can't see a reason for it. I can't see a fault, although I'll have a look later. I'm interested in that endless loop that Tim referred to. Yeah, it happened. The only thing I was thinking was that if you do a site operator check of the two domains, the one with the longer amount of letters has still got about 1,000 pages indexed in Google, according to the site operator search. And to me, that means that Googlebot's just not moving them over. And so I'd be tempted to take the 301 redirect off the longer site, which the migration is coming from, and leave the canonicals to do their work and see what happens then. And yes, that was one thing that he did mention, that site, the news site, the 3-letter domain, was owned by somebody else, and there's no knowledge of whether it's a toxic domain or not.
Right. That's one of the things that comes to mind right away. Bought a used domain. Was there a penalty cost, to doing that? And that's due diligence before a move. Now that the move's in place, that's not as important, but that could have taken a hit. But the fact that he's saying this is page specific makes that less of an issue. The transition itself, do we know that he's done everything that he needed to do in Google Search Console to signify that he has moved to a new domain? Is he suffering some continued lack of trust from Google because he just basically didn't say that? Nested crawling errors and various crawling issues on his site could have existed previously, and over time, lacking further signs of mistrust, Google may have just built up a certain level of respect for the domain and shown its pages. But when it moved to a new domain, may have suffered like a new look, and if they're not up to snuff with regard to their crawlability and indexation, then they're back just like a new site would be. So they're under the magnifying glass, and what it comes back to the name. We're search engine optimizers. Optimization means perfection. Nobody wants to get down in the weeds and bushwhack and all that, but what it comes down to is, unless he does what I think Tim is suggesting, certain pages could continue to suffer over the long term. So he's got to pick apart the knots in the way that the spider is moving across his site, and that's going to take some individual attention and lots of detail. For instance, Tim brings up subdomains and such, and they do exist. So some of the subdomains have robots.txt. I'm suspecting some of them may not. Some of the subdomains have sitemap.xml, and some of them do not. And so, there's a bunch of things that could be preventing pages that Google had found otherwise in the past, and now just, may, be taking a new, fresh eye to things. So, I agree, and that thinking about Penguin, I think that Webmaster may have brought up Penguin in general, and that one of the questions is, does the link profile look spammy? And so, William Rock dove in, took a look at it. Thanks, William, for doing that. He's, being a site that has to do with support for software, and there's lots of footer links apparently, backlinks, perhaps using excessive exact match anchor text and things. And since the practice for many sites is to aim all of those links at the home page and not deeply into the site, what do we find out? We find out their home page is one of the pages that he cites as having suffered. So, doing a link profile, thinking about that, thinking about how they fared during past Penguin updates, and that would just be a sign that if they just didn't resolve those issues in the past, what's happened is the new Penguin has kicked the leg out from underneath the stool. It's not that it's a penalty, but they may have been getting benefit from links in the past that have now been recrawled, and in real time, the support from those links has been removed. So all those things that a webmaster gets accustomed to, goodbye.
And to add to that, Michael, I think I pulled up a report, and I won't name the domain out of privacy, but they look like in SEMrush, in the traffic report for organic, they lost or started losing traffic in September 2011, right? So it's a consistent decline over the years. And then about October 15th, they were pretty much flatlined by something. And then what I'm seeing is September 2016, which was mentioned in the comments or the question, that things were changed. They have a huge spike in organic traffic to November 2016. So it's kind of interesting. You mentioned, suppression of traffic and then maybe some additional traffic, and that's what we're showing in the reports. But when you do go back to like the anchor text, it's, you could see it in a whole bunch of websites and it's exact match. A little messy. That might be, like you said, a little bit of a penguin affecting him.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that you can, in SEMrush, you can see a big stack of traffic that just appeared in November, and maybe he was inadvertently negative SEOing himself with his links under the old Penguin, and the new Penguin simply discounted them. As I said, it looked like after the Penguin rollout was complete, he picked up about 1,000 keywords. Well, maybe by the same token, he did drop that particular keyword. Well, it's obviously dropped because he's at position 1,000 for it. So yeah, it could all be Penguin related, eh? Or I still stand by my first guess, which was that someone at Google's having a laugh.
Well, Emmanuel, the sign of a long, slow decline that that William brings up is pretty much a signal of a filter being applied over time, and that would be a manual action. And we know that not all manual actions, especially those in the past, wound up with a message in Search Console. So that's quite likely. If the date that it started to have this decline coincides with, say, a Panda release, then you could kind of say, well, maybe they have this slim content. They only have like 150 words or something in all these posts, articles, and pages. And slowly over time, that's been eroding. But yeah, I have to go with Jim and say some form of manual penalty in a space that I don't know how competitive this is in the UK. Business to business is pretty fiercely competitive, and what I see and what Tim's revealed and stuff makes me think that this is pretty well over-engineered in almost every possible way. That the penalties it has suffered in the past say it gets lots and lots of attention. You might even say too much attention. because they've attracted attention from Google. So, you know, yeah. Jim.
Michael, you were actually pretty spot on with that Panda. Back in September 2011, SEMrush is reporting in their dashboard that Panda 4.2 was on that list. And as I started looking in the keyword reporting track, that's where it started as far as September 2011, the decline, all the way down to September of 2016.
Wow. So yeah, pretty long continuous decline, and that's a very good signal of Panda. Looking at their, very briefly at their content and how thin it is, and then I have to wonder, you know, I haven't run a check on the content for dupe, and I'm wondering if it's another, you know, issue. Yes, the content is thin. Could it have been paraphrased or taken from someplace else? If it's about particular kinds of software, could it have been cribbed in a really, you know, honest, genuinely attempt to be useful kind of way? Was it taken from software sites or something like that? So there you go. That's, you know, it's kind of like, it's starting to sound like the perfect storm. A manually applied filter, a long-term Panda issue, the possibility of flux at the time of Penguin. So, you know, there's a nest of issues there, and I think any one of us would be happy to get consulting time helping them figure this out and emerge from these issues. But that's a great question. I like that one.
Cool.
Yes, it certainly was a great question. I think we've exhausted all possibilities, and unfortunately we can't come up with a definitive answer for Dean, but certainly some ideas to start looking. Anyway, Dean, if when you hear this, I take my hat off to you, mate. That's great work. All right, let's move on to the next, if there are no objections. Okay, we've only got 2 questions tonight, so this is good. This is from our good friend Chase Rayner. It's titled Site Search Data for a News Website. Chase says, hey everyone, I'm trying to collect site search data through analytics for a news website on the unusual CMS called Ellington. For some reason, when I look at the site queries, it's all a bunch of URLs and no actual words. This can't be right. Is there something I'm missing here? Chase. Keep in mind that this is site search data, maybe from Google Custom Search.
So site search is like its own animal, and the fact that this is in a CMS that's unknown to me makes me somewhat reluctant to say too much about that. If you're looking at the queries and people are entering URLs, could it be that there are bots arriving on the site, grabbing URLs and throwing them in the site search just to see what comes back? You'd want to look in analytics and just see how bot crazy your traffic is, and that I don't think that would take too long to discover. But knowing that 60% of your traffic or more could be bot related, that starts to get an idea. If they're every single one of them, these URLs, then that's not as likely. So if you get any traffic from human beings at all, you would think that there would have to be some searches taking place using some form of query, phrase, word, whatever it is. And so something's misconfigured. If you've recently installed this CMS, I don't know that this is a question for dumb SEO questions, but this is more like dumb CMS questions and going back to support for that.
Yeah, and the other thing I would probably also look at, I looked at the CMS. It looks like a pretty clean system, but at the same time, as I'm wondering, if you're looking for site search data, do you also have Google Analytics on those internal site search pages? And then that way you can start to get identified traffic where you can customize your flow through data and analytics to see that direction of where people are going, where they're leaving, just like you would on your product pages or your content pages. There's also basically in yeah, so I would probably start looking a little bit more into analytics, but I've got a link up here I'll add into the comments, Jim, so that they can kind of reference this as well.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if this is a dynamic, dynamic creation of pages kind of CMS. If it is somehow creating a loop between arrivals on the site for, or searches for particular keywords or even clicks in navigation, and it's serving up some kind of URL. I've seen people set CMSs to create a useful result for people, even if that specific page doesn't resolve. So rather than serving up a 404 and saying we don't really have this, or a custom 404, they get in this loop where they allow their search to continue to craft URLs until it finds something. It's like roulette. Bingo, here's a result for you. And I don't know what that would look like in the log of the actual search system. So I'm wondering, it just makes me wonder, because frankly, I don't think that that's a great practice. I know people do it, especially on e-com sites, because they don't want to lose the traffic. They want to make the money if they can. But, that's just what comes to mind.
I was looking to see if there was any help documents out there for the CMS to talk more about their product and site search, and then also the tracking. But I'm wondering, if they've already got that data, that we're looking for already in Google Analytics, if they go into some of their deeper pages inside the page report. They might be able to surface that out, or even have a URL parameter that focuses on that, or even use Google internal site search. It basically crawls it and has a little directory for that. But I'm not very familiar with their CMS, so I'm kind of guessing and pointing at straws too. Sorry.
By the way, Tim, I have to apologize to you. There was a great thing that you put in the comments for Dean in the previous question, that link there. I'll pass that on to Dean. But it does have a canonical link, which when that's landed on, it redirects back to the page that the canonical's on. It doesn't make sense at all, does it? All right, we've covered Chase's question 2, I think, haven't we? Let's say that we have. I'll just tweet that. Well, we've done it again. It wasn't hard today. We only had the 2 questions, but now we look at items of interest which were posted on the SEO news community. And the first item was, sorry, Michael, I see that there are 2 more questions from Webmaster.
I could be wrong. So I see a Google Analytics spam data question. I don't know the source of it. Is that where we're headed?
Yes, that's off our SEO news community.
Okay, sorry.
Cool. Yes, I'm not sure. I haven't been checking many logs this week, but I've had a hell of a week. Yeah, it was the Trump campaign hammering sites with vote for Trump spam. Anybody notice that happening? Well, you heard it here first. All right, let's move on to the next. I don't know how far we'll get with the next one. This actually, I've got a comment on this. I made this post. It's titled "Negative SEO did not work in the past." I must have a chat to Dan because the actual post I made was that Google spokesman wants you to believe negative SEO did not work in the past, which is opposite. And you guys may not want to make any comments critical of Google, and I totally understand. But you know, this is just from a personal viewpoint as someone that was absolutely hammered by negative SEO. I don't mind about the money, but what I do mind is, I mean, Google created the situation that made negative SEO possible. So where I think people should be entitled to expect a level playing field where the actions of a competitor cannot cause damage to your site. Google did create that, and I just find it insulting when people from Google say, "No, doesn't happen," you know, you guys may have an opinion on it, may not, and I don't mind either way. But just my opinion is that, you know, okay, I understand that Google may have legal reasons not to admit liability. Nobody cares about liability. I mean, it's just a matter of a lot of people were hurt by negative SEO, and you know, my question is, if negative SEO didn't work, why did Google have to spend all that money making a new Panda, which worked in a different way? I mean, a new Penguin. And why did they call it Penguin 4? It's really, it's the new Penguin version 1.0, because the old Penguin has no relation to the new Penguin. It works in a totally different way. The new Penguin works the way Bing has always done it. They just simply ignored links, and that's, I think, early days, but that's I think how Google is operating now. Anyway, enough of my rant. Rant has ended.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you, Jim, in a big way. I just did a webinar panel with Ami Sito in London, and I wasn't in London. Wish I was, but the idea that Penguin has now become the way that it originally should have been crafted came up and resonated with almost everybody. I mean, the people were in agreement that the penalization aspect of it was the idea that there had to be a punitive measure to prevent people from misusing links. Okay. Yes, I've seen profiles with 5 million, 10 million links, and sure as shooting, they didn't earn all of that, because it's a 15-page website that sells Scotch tape or something, and it's just crazy. So the idea that there had to be some punishment early on, I can't really fault Google for that, because yes, their index was very spammy. There were sites at the top that didn't belong there at all, and they stayed there with a minimum outlay, just building a bunch of crappy links. in the most iterative kind of way that had no value really for them in terms of traffic or relevance, but just kept them afloat. So maybe early on, some kind of backlash from Google was necessary, some form of punishment. And we've seen this where Google almost picks scapegoats to apply a penalty to, makes it a big PR announcement about who got attacked and why, so that they can start to sway opinion. And this is like a real PR tactic, and Google is a huge enterprise, and sure, they use those methods. They use FUD, which I think was a term maybe invented by Microsoft, another giant enterprise: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So the whole idea that negative SEO didn't work, or that they make announcements about things that kind of clouds, somebody said one thing, another Googler said something else. It's just it's a tactic, and it gets used all of the time in PR. So the people that we think are search experts from Google, the Gary Muellers, and thinking some of the other, maybe to a lesser extent, Andrei Lopatsev and Gary Ilyas. Yes, they know their stuff. They're brilliant, but really what they are is PR organs for Google. And so they do their job. And honestly, they do their job very, very well. I could not take the volume and tenor of questions that they do and come back with, the kinds of answers to frame the conversation the way that they do over and over and over again. So, my hat's off to those guys. They do a great job at what they do, and they do the job that they're hired to do. But back to the beginning, the new Penguin, I agree, something new. It's not punitive. It just takes away the value of those links. And the fact that you have companies, webmasters worldwide, who pay for those links. If you're paying for crappy links and they're not providing any value, maybe that's punishment enough, right? You're not going to get any value back to the site. It's not really going to deliver any page rank. Why are you doing this? Eventually you'll wise up, or you'll go out of business doing something futile. So that is the way it works now. It's more real time. It's more responsive. Sure, everything that we expect these days is immediate. And again, hats off to Google, because that's just awesome, for everybody. So I don't know. I'm done. I guess Tim came up with something. No, okay. He's got some breaking news.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is breaking news. So it's kind of, that had to be caught by a screenshot, but it's kind of being rolled out. It's not live. It is live. It's not live. It is live. So that's the first showing of the new advanced verification testing. So notice how the service area businesses have been stripped out of the local pack, and they've been added to a home service unit above the local pack.
Oh yeah, I see that. Interesting.
Yeah.
So with I want to just, can I just follow up on Michael's
question? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Penguin. I put in the notes kind of like a long drawn out thing. We've talked about it here on the show for quite some time. Basically, one of the studies that I had been hacked upon, and I was actually suffered a MySQL database injection. So I had over, I think, if I remember the numbers, like 50,000 injected pages for certain keywords. And then with that, in the same process, a botnet actually built about 30,000 backlinks to all those pages. So through RSS feeds and just total trash URLs, stuff that as a webmaster, you don't want to necessarily go and click on to see what they are. You just know they're toxic. And half of those, I did find that we're also spitting out malware. So trying to get the actual webmaster to click on the link and get the malware attack, not fun. But and this happened back last October 2015, and I thought, okay, this client is going to just fall off the face of the earth with negative SEO. And Jim, we've seen in the past all of the, you mentioned one of your friends that have been affected by a negative SEO attack and went out of business, right? And we hear across the news that actually did happen. And now, what I wanted to know is, out of this attack, it was great that we got rid of everything, but the links we haven't got rid of. And I didn't use a disavow file for this one in particular. And that's all documented in the post that I put in the page that you'll see afterwards, the show. But it goes right to my LinkedIn profile with the actual screenshots of all the different pieces of what I was screenshotting that Google had found, and long story. But at that point, that's when I was convinced that fingers crossed, that based off of what Penguin has been doing, this client hadn't been affected by the negative SEO link spam. So I've kind of gone through all that on my LinkedIn profile. The page itself where I have everything documented, I still need to go back in the bottom and add all this information. But it's been an interesting study, not even using a disavow file. And Google identified that this was an actual hack. Said, I had this, the site message, the site was hacked. We got rid of all that, we cleaned it all up. Again, but the links were still there. There are 30,000 of them. The client started out with maybe a handful, like 100 links, all from just random stuff. It wasn't built. But Google was able to not effectively drop any of the rankings across the board for the money keywords for this client. And I was just super impressed at that point, because again, going back from October 2015 when the actual attack happened, you would think even with the old non-rolling Penguin that it would have actually devoted this thing. I mean, it would have probably destroyed it when it saw it. But in some case, it was not destroyed. It was continued where the client was still to stay alive, even though they were actually effectively attacked negatively for, trying to destroy them through link spam. So
that's you came under manual auspices, I guess, and that's what enabled.
Actually, it wasn't so manual. Not on the side of Google. They didn't give me a penalty for it. Mm-hmm. It just continued on, and that was it.
Yeah, but October 2015, the old Penguin ran intermittently. I don't think it ran between October and now.
It's possible. It's also, it's possible that, well, I just want to make a distinction here, and that is that what we're talking about with negative SEO, I'm going to say, is a crime that requires intent. And if somebody's using negative SEO to knock your rank down, I mean, yeah, you can use the same tools that other SEOs use for their own positive SEO that has a negative effect. Frankly, I don't think that they cared that your particular site suffered any more than the other 1,000 sites that they targeted with this injection attack. They just found a vulnerability. It didn't have your domain's name on it. It just was like, oh, here's a good way of getting all these links injected into all these sites for porn, for gambling, for whatever I can't get build links for otherwise. And so it turned out to be negative, yes, or could have been negative, especially had it happened before, say, a Penguin update when it was still punitive. And I've seen this affect sites over the long term where they did get an injection, but now we have to face the fact that Google is getting more and more insistent on outing sites that have had injections or have had attacks, are subject to vulnerabilities, may not be safe. Soon they're going to take sites that aren't HTTPS, secure protocol, and they're going to announce that they're insecure in search results. if your site's been hacked. They love to announce that this may not be a safe site to visit. Not to mention the people who are running antivirus software like Norton or something says the same thing. Mozilla may say that through, Firefox. They may say, oh, you may not want to visit this site. So that all of that really damages you in search. Those kinds of recoveries are tough. You're, as a webmaster, not always in control of updating the site, the plugins, all the things that, especially with WordPress or something, all the things that get added on top of it, Magento with, 25 plugins or whatever add-ons. The longer those things go without an update, the more vulnerable they become. And it's hard. You're not always in control of the budget or the ability to make those kinds of changes, even though you can pretty easily do lookups, built with, and look up what's out of date and how far out of date or how many versions back things are, and know that people should be quaking in their boots because the attacks are coming.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, if we don't have any other items of general business, I'd like to declare this meeting closed.
Aye.
All right. Well, look, those of you that watch us, we thank you. Your interest in what we do makes what we do worthwhile. You can post your questions on the SEO Questions community on Google+, on our Facebook page, Dumb SEO Questions, and also via Twitter, if you like, on Dumb SEO QS. All right, we'll be back at the same time next week to do this all again, but for now, it's good night.